You are listening to Brave Talk Radio. You're just in time to join today's Brave Conversations with your hosts, Jackie Little Guest, Deryl Williams, and Toni Emehel.
Well, y'all sound so excited.
Well, you know what? It's funny because I'm sitting here looking at trying to find some other health insurance, because it's crazy that the health insurance is outrageous. The premiums are outrageous. And for me, it has doubled this year. This is something that we have to have, but yet can you afford it? That's the issue.
Well, in the words of FDR, I hate quoting him, but he says nothing is by accident. Everything that happens in this country is planned. So if that's what's happening, that's what's supposed to happen. Unfortunately, it's not fair, but it's the nature of, the society that we live in, where we have no control. We were told that this was going to be a healthcare system that everyone was going to have access to. But what was not really talked about a lot, which I paid a whole lot of attention to this, was the escalating cost and just the economic burden that this would create for a lot of families, which it has. And that's not really something that's really been talked about much in the media. But it's been a very serious issue on social media.
Okay, so what's going on with the Flint, Michigan issue? Has anybody been keeping up with that?
Well, there's a very familiar pattern here. Things happen. There's a lot of controversy surrounding some of these media-generated stories. And then, depending upon what segment of the population we're really talking about, the interest in that subject will start to wane. I understand that there was a march led by, I believe, Jesse Jackson last week. I don't give a whole lot of credence to that. We don't need to be marching. We've been marching now for 50 years. I think that, that offers people some degree of relief. But at the end of the day, the water still has lead in it. The families that are being adversely affected by this, still need some type of redress in the form of clean water that they can cook with, bathe with, and wash their clothes with, and maintain their families. Last week, when we spoke about this issue, we talked about biochemical warfare. And I think, Toni, you offered a definition of what that means. I've been talking a lot about genocide and using that term, and I've come to the conclusion that I don't really think people really know what that is to a great extent. So what I did in preparation for our conversation today was I found the Geneva Convention's definition from 1948 of just what genocide is. And when I read this, it will become very clear that there's been a continual pattern of genocide in this country in regards to its black population. Here we go. Genocide defined, this is the international legal definition of the crime of genocide. That is found in Article 2 and 3 of the 1948 Geneva Convention of the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide. And this is important because before Malcolm X died, most people don't remember this, he was on his way to the United Nations to charge the American government with genocide against the black population, and this is why. Article 2 describes two elements of the crime of genocide. Number one, the mental element, and that is the intent to destroy in whole or part a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. Number two, the physical element consists of 5 acts. A, killing members of a group. Okay. B, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of a group. When you put lead in the water and people are drinking this water, it causes serious bodily and mental harm. We're talking lead. Lead destroys the brain. It causes skin rashes. It causes permanent brain damage, etc., especially when your children are made to drink it. Okay, so this is what the Geneva Convention says. It says C. Now, this is important. It says deliberately inflicting on a group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. So when you have a government that goes around now promoting homosexuality, which does not produce life, which terminates life, and you have a homosexuality, we call it a lifestyle, but it's really a death style because you're not producing anything. And then you have this other organization called Planned Parenthood, which is really planned genocide, where I have the official numbers on this, and I'll give you the last one. It's planned genocide or Planned Parenthood, whatever we want to call it. From 1973 to 2016, in the black community, there's been over 30 million abortions. That calculates to 750,000 babies a year, African black children a year, 39,062 a month, 1,300 a day. That equates 54 black babies per hour that are killed in this country. And it's called Planned Parenthood, which is really planned genocide. Okay, so the deliberate inflicting on a group conditions of life calculated, planned to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part. D, imposing measures, I just read this, to prevent births within a group. Okay, a.k.a. Planned. Now, why am I focusing on Planned? Let me start right there for a minute. Remember last week I told y'all that Margaret Sanger, who was a eugenicist. What is a eugenicist? Let me give you a definition of eugenics. Eugenics is the planned, scientifically planned destruction of a group, or the science of mass genocide. What that means is how to eradicate populations scientifically, a.k.a. Planned Parenthood. In reality, planned genocide. Margaret Sanger said, in order to advance our program, and the main focus of this program was to eradicate black people. She said, we don't want and I'm going to quote her, she said, we don't want the word to get out that we want to exterminate black people. And the process for getting us to accept and embrace this was using ministers. She said, and one of the ministers that they wanted to use before they killed him was Martin Luther King.
Wow.
I'm saying it like this because we need to wake up. Black people need to wake up. We are asleep and we're dying and we're being killed off. Let me be the last one about genocide, the last act of genocide. Forcibly transferring children from one group to another group. Now, all of this stuff I just read about genocide, and I'm focusing on us because we're the ones that's most affected by it, happens every day in our community. And we've been anesthetized to it. We've been completely anesthetized to it. It's like that don't even matter to us. We were 13% of the population at one time in this country alone. Now we're down to 8-9%. Okay, 30 million people have been aborted. Our numbers are shrinking. We're disappearing. And everybody was just dancing, partying, and like none of this matters. Now, one more thing. Last week I said that the paradigm for genocide in this country of biochemical warfare that relates to what's going on in Flint, Michigan right now, we talked about Jeffrey Amherst. Let me read something to you so I can back up everything I say. This comes to directly out of a book called The Hidden History of Massachusetts. I told you I lived in Massachusetts, and I told you it's like the racism capital of the country and the world, in my opinion. But here the town of Amherst, it says, in the mid-18th century, Sir Jeffrey Amherst was commander-in-chief, listen to this, of the British forces in North America. Now, that contradicts that lie they taught us in our history classes when we were in school. The British commander-in-chief of the British forces in North America, and he got a town named after him? That's a contradiction right there. But let me continue. One of his responsibilities in this capacity was to annihilate the native population. And it was he who conceived of and implemented a strategy to send smallpox among them. It says he believed that the only true method for treating the savages, meaning people that had never done nothing to these people, that were peaceful, that had their own civilizations, own societies, on this continent, in this hemisphere for thousands of years, they referred to them as savages. It says the true method of treating the savages is to keep them in proper subjection and punish without exception. It says in a 1763 letter to his colonel, Amherst initiated the first known use of biological or biochemical warfare in the New World. It goes on to say, and these are his words, could it not be contrived to send the smallpox among these disaffected, meaning the people didn't even have it? And how they gave it to them was they gave them blankets that were taken from infirmaries where Europeans who had smallpox laid on those blankets. When you have a disease and you sweat and that sweat comes through your pores, whatever you've been lying on or your DNA is in that article, whatever it is, what blanket, sheet, whatever it is. So they gave them as gifts now,
wow.
smallpox blankets. It says, disaffected tribes of natives. We must listen to this. Listen, my people. My heart is bleeding right now because I'm having to read this again. It says, we must on this occasion use every stratagem in our power to reduce, and I'm going to substitute the word eradicate. I'm going to use another word, exterminate them. This man has a town, Amherst, Massachusetts, and a university, the University of Massachusetts Amherst, or Amherst University, named after him.
I think the problem with our people is that we are challenged with connecting the dots, because we can hear information like this and we don't connect the dots to how it links to what we currently experience in our own surroundings, in our own culture, in our own hometown. So we can hear about this historical information, and we can hear about this man having a town, and, that was how he thought then. And we never really equate that to what we experience here in our hometown.
Okay, you want me to connect some dots for you? I can do that.
Yeah. Because that's what we have to do. It's almost like, prime example, you talked about the number of abortions that are occurring within the black race on a daily basis, historically, and how that number just continues to increase. I know back when I was in school, it was unheard of for a young black girl to get an abortion. Mm-hmm. It was absolutely unheard of. If there was a teenager that got pregnant in school, she was African American, she was not getting an abortion. And if she was a Caucasian girl, you never knew she was pregnant. So anyway, there's a Catholic church that I pass by periodically, and at least a couple of times a year, if not more, they have their lawn set up like a grave. And on that grave site, that makeshift grave site that they create, they put up a huge sign, and it is in recognition and in honor of all the babies that are aborted on a daily basis. Now, again, they're raising awareness to that. It's for all babies, not just, one ethnicity, but particularly this is a Catholic church, and they raise awareness. Now, I don't go to the Catholic Church, and I don't go to a multicultural church. I go to a historically black church. I can't tell you as an adult in the black church that I've heard a sermon or any time dedicated to talking about this issue of abortion.
Let me help you out, Toni. Let me help you out.
Back in 1992, help me.
Yeah, I'm gonna help you out. Back in 1992, I very seldom ever talk about this, but I'm gonna talk about it right now, and then I'm never gonna talk about it again. I was at a church in Boston. I think I told you guys I served as a youth minister. I was approached by the senior pastor at one point because I had shown some signs of being, the outspoken, fearless, intrepid person that I am with regard to speaking to anything, spiritual or otherwise. And she and I both agreed that perhaps God had called me to preach. Okay, I went and I took what's called homiletics classes, where you're taught how to present the gospel to a congregation. And I remember this particular pastor telling me, if you can't preach anything else, preach Jesus. Okay, so when they first allowed me to get up in front of the congregation and speak to the congregation, I was raised up in a first family. Okay, I've been around preachers all my life. I know what they do, and if I want to get up and imitate them, I could. Okay, so when I first started as a young minister in training and given, they gave me every second Sunday night to speak to the congregation. When I first started, I knew exactly what scriptures to use. I let God lead me, and I would get up and I would scream and holler and squall, and ooh, they loved that. And then one day, God spoke to me and said, no, if you're going to do this, we need to be talking about stuff. We need to be presenting information to these people that are going to help them. Because at that time, our young black males were being slaughtered. Okay, so I went in a completely different direction. I felt led to go in a completely different direction, and I started speaking to the social issues and challenges we had as African-American people and using the scriptures to enlighten our people that way. That same pastor that came to me and told me that God showed her, she was a female pastor, that I was called to preach, all of a sudden had a problem with me speaking to the congregation. And told me, well, if that's the way you're gonna, if that's the kind of preacher you're gonna be, you'd be better off not preaching and just being a lecturer. And when she told me that, that was the last time, one of the last times actually, that I was involved in the preacher circuit. Now, when I was squalling and I was doing what everybody else was doing and putting on a show, I had churches calling me up, want me to come speak. I had pastors offering to pay me to come speak, as long as I came and I stuck to the script. But when you start talking about real issues and talking about things that people need to know and talk about doing research that's going to help them and their families survive, no one wants to hear it. And there's another thing I'll tell you. There was a pastor here in Charlotte at a Baptist church who did preach a sermon on abortion, who did preach a sermon on Planned Parenthood. I was there. Do you know when he talked, just like my situation, you could hear a pin drop while he was talking. No one was interested in what he was. He cited the very same numbers I just cited on this broadcast. And no one in that church really paid any attention to him. It was after he finished speaking, someone else got up and went into what I call the church act and started screaming and jumping and had everybody flipping and acting the fool. You know, that's what our people are conditioned to in our churches. And when you come to them, you talk to them and tell them, look, we're dying off. We're being killed. We're being wiped out. Look, we need to be researching this. Look, here's the information. Look, let's get some study groups. Look, let's become economically viable. Let's put our money together. Let's do something to help our people. No one wants to hear it. Go ahead, Jackie, because you know I'm on a roll.
But you do have a point because, you know, growing up in church, you know, it was, to me, it was more fire brimstone. You know, if you sin, you're going to hell. If you do this, you know that. But it was never, let's dig into the issue at hand. Let's talk about the abortion. It was never, you know, the specific. It was more of a general preaching. So the pastor would get up there, hoop, holler, and you had no clue what he was saying. And at the end of the service, oh, he preached a good message. Well, what was it about? I had no clue, but it was good. You know, for him to jump on the pews and jump over the pulpit and stuff like that. But they never addressed the issues. You're right about that. Been there. As long as you stuck to the script and made everybody feel, you know, a certain way, oh, you the man.
Well, I think the challenge is they want to be entertained.
Let's deal with that. Let's deal with that.
Yeah.
Let's deal with that.
Well, you know
Jackie,
what? Can we deal with that when we come back?
It's not just entertainment, though. There's a paradigm there that I need to make very clear.
Okay, we're gonna do it when we come back.
Yes.
Okay, we'll be back in a second. Stay with us.
You are listening to Brave Talk Radio at ToniEmehel.com.
This is Deryl Williams of Brave Talk Radio, coming back at you with another Black History moment. Today we'll be talking about Andrew Bishop Rube Foster. Few men have dominant careers as baseball players. Even fewer have success as a manager. But Rube Foster excelled on the diamond as a manager and as an executive, earning him the recognition as the father of black baseball and owner of the Negro Leagues. Born on September 17, 1879 in Calvert, Texas, Foster began his playing career pitching for the Fort Worth Yellow Jackets in 1897. By 1902, he was hurling for the Giants in Chicago, then jumped to Otsego, Michigan, semi-pro white team, and before heading to the Philadelphia Cuban ex-Giants. That season, he won 44 games in a row. The ex-Giants beat the Philadelphia Giants for the 1903 Colored Championship of the World as Foster threw 4 of the 5 Giants wins. The following season, he joined the Philadelphia Giants and led them to the pennant, defeating his former team in the playoff. Do not worry. Try to appear jolly and unconcerned, said Rube Foster about pitching out of jams. I've often smiled with the bases full with 2 strikes and 3 balls on the batter. This seems to unnerve. Star pitcher thrived in the dead ball era, but had set his sights higher than just on the mound. In 1911, he entered into a partnership with John Shorling, son-in-law of Charles Comiskey. Shorling had leased the old White Sox grounds, and Foster provided the Chicago American Giants a black team to play there. As an owner-manager, Foster instilled a daring, aggressive, yet disciplined style of play for which the Negro Leagues became famous. He attracted star players but faced declining attendance. In 1920, Foster set the wheels in motion to create the Negro National League, an association of black teams modeled after the Major League Baseball. Foster was named president and treasurer. The first successful Negro League, the NNL, flourished throughout the decade. Players' salaries rose to unprecedented levels. The team traveled on the Pullman coach, and the players received regular bonuses. Foster not only administered the league, but continued to serve as manager and owner of the American Giants. A strict coach, Foster had high expectations for his team, and they rewarded him by winning the first 3 pennants. In 1926, the grueling schedule got to Foster, and he suffered a nervous breakdown. 4 years later, Foster died. When Rube Foster died, Negro baseball died with him, said Joe Green, a fellow Negro Leagues player, manager, and owner. Foster was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1981. Rube Foster, the father of black baseball and the owner of the former Negro Leagues. He did all of that in the early 1900s and was not elected into the Baseball Hall of Fame until 1981. What a tragedy. This is Deryl Williams of BraveTalk Radio.
Today's broadcast has been brought to you by Next Level Plus Project Management and Business Consultants. Learn more about how Next Level Plus can help you solve the right problems and seize the right opportunities by calling 704-780-2997 or visit their website at nextlevelplus.org.
It's Brave Talk Radio on ToniEmehel.com with your host, Deryl Williams, Jackie Little Guess, and Toni Emehel.
Okay, before we took our break, Dr. Toni Emehel talked about the entertainment facet of the pulpit and some of the things that are pontificated, I'm going to use that term, in our services, and them being more entertainment-based. Here's the issue. Again, you've got to look into the history of a thing to understand what is happening at the current time. Let's go back to the plantation system. When we first came here, everything about us was stripped from us, including religion. When we were allowed to become Christians, it was made very clear that we were to receive Christian instruction that the plantation master approved of. The preacher could not get up in front of us on the plantation and talk about our condition, and talk about strategizing, and talk about building, and talk about issues that we faced as we were being treated treacherously on these plantations. He had to preach what Massa told him to preach. And to make sure that the slave preacher, who was appointed by the Massa, by the way, was preaching what he was told to preach, you had to have a white overseer in those services or an agent of the plantation system to make sure that that preacher preached to that slave congregation what was prescribed by the Massa. And to this day, for the most part, in our church community, that is still what happens. You have to the script was given to us by the system or the masters of the system. And pretty much not much has changed. The only thing that has really changed, Jack, and I'm glad you talked about fire and brimstone, because if you notice, preachers aren't really preaching that no more. Preachers aren't preaching against they're not preaching against homosexuality now. They're not preaching heaven and hell anymore. As a matter of fact, the Catholic Church has come out and said, number one, there's no such place as hell. That was something that was invented by the popes in days of yore to terrorize people into accepting Christianity. And you also had in 2014, at the same time that everybody was down in, I think, New Orleans, and there was some issue with our community with someone had, I think it was Michael Bell in that group, and Sharpton had everybody down there marching again. While that happened, the Catholic Church came out, and I have the article, 2014, in May of 2014, and said that, oh, well, Jesus is not coming back. The Catholic Church said this. Jesus, wow. They used to have a ritual every year around May, after Easter, to commemorate Jesus' soon impending return to the earth. They came out in 2014 and told the world, well, that ain't happening. Jesus ain't coming back. Nobody knew this. I knew because I got the article. They said this. This was the official. This was an official release by the Catholic Church. Okay, so people. Wow, I hate going here, but people. You got to do your own research, and if you're gonna have a spiritual relationship with God, this is what I say. It better be personal, because that's the only way it's going to be real. You have to have a personal walk and personal relationship with your Creator. Otherwise, if you depend on some of these people in pulpits, and I'm not deprecating all preachers, I'm just saying there's a whole lot of them now. Their gospel or their theology is very liberal, and it's watered down now. You have to know that you know on your own.
You do, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't look at. And I am on Facebook. I am intentionally in connection with several people who consider themselves to be men and women of the cloth, as they used to say back in the day. And it always disappoints me to see the antics that I see through the video clips that are put on. The shows that are put on from the pulpit with the what do you call it, the hacking and sometimes they get the yelling so bad you can't even understand what they're saying. And let's just deliver the word of God. Let's preach the gospel. Let's teach the gospel. Let's share this message of love and how to treat one another, how to bear up one another's burdens, how to release those who are being held captive in their mind, how to break strongholds and cast down imaginations. Are preachers really doing that now? And yes, some are, but there are so many that aren't. And I guess that's where the Bible talks about these false teachers and these folks who run around here with a form of godliness, but they're denying the power thereof because it's become a show. It's become entertainment. And I do understand the sensationalism that a lot of pastors are faced with on Sunday mornings when the dead and dry congregation is looking at them for energy and strength and trying to draw from them. But there has to be a better way than putting on these antics of entertainment in order to cause actually what I would call it is emotional manipulation.
You know what? Well, a lot of it is it's a money thing. If I can get them to, the better the entertainment, the more they will come and they will bring other people, and that's more money that I will get into my church or into my pocket. And I'm not saying that for every pastor and every preacher, but that's the mentality of a lot of people. That is why the church, the pastors, are not given that respect that they used to get. Because there was a time when the pastor walked into the room, he got respect. Oh, because the pastor, but now it's like, whatever. Because
just look, get up here and put on this show for me. Get up here and put on this. They treat them like motivational speakers, and it really is a huge disappointment, particularly because there are a lot of good pastors out there, but the few that are not, the ones that hit the news, they spoil the whole reputation of the pastoring for the church, and particularly the black church. As soon as you see a black pastor plastered in the news for mishandling money or misappropriating money or commingling funds or tax evasion, now all of a sudden every black pastor in America and across the world has to wear what that one pastor did. And so consequently, pastors have to come in and fight against that every Sunday morning. Now, again, I'm not naive, because God has given me a great gift and anointing of discernment of those things that are ungodly in my presence. So you can get up there, hack, hop, jump, run on chairs, and spit in the mic all you want to. If what you're teaching and what you're saying is not coming from a holy place, I'm going to know that. And the way I know it, even now, with regard to the church, is that we are not hitting on these issues that can potentially wipe out a race.
Well, let me. I'm glad you went back there. There's one other thing, a couple other things I want to get to the people. From a book called Bad Blood, when we talked about connecting dots. I'm going to read this. It says, in late July 1972, now this is more recent, and then I got something else that is recent. Gene Hiller of the Associated Press broke the story. For 40 years, the United States Public Health Service, PHS, had been conducting a study on the effects of untreated syphilis on black men in Macon County, Alabama, in and around the county seat of Tuskegee, called the Tuskegee Study. Says it involved a substantial number of men, 399 who had syphilis, and an additional 201 who were free of the disease that were chosen to serve as controls. It says all of the syphilitic men were in the late stage of the disease when the study began. Okay, now let me move on. I'm going to get to the crux right here. Now, remember, I'm always on here talking about the media and the propaganda lies that they put out. Fox, CNN, NBC. I don't believe nothing they say anytime they say it. Here's the reason why. I skipped a lot because it would take a few minutes for me to read on. It talks about when syphilis evolves or escalates in your body, it creates just chaos throughout your body. Okay, so these men went through excruciating horror and pain throughout this whole process. But here on page number 4 or 5 is the media, what I'm always talking about with regard to the media. It says what the health officials had told the men in 1932 was far more difficult to determine. An officer of the venereal disease branch of the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, now I need y'all to remember what I just said, Center for the Disease Control in Atlanta, remember that. The agency that was in charge of the Tuskegee study in 1972 assured reporters, the media, that participants were told at the beginning that they had syphilis, and they were told what the disease could do to them, and that they were given the opportunity to withdraw from the program at any time and receive treatment. Okay, that's the lie. But a physician, a brother, with firsthand knowledge of the experiment's early years, directly contradicted that statement. Listen at the name, Dr. J.W. Williams. Thank God for another Williams like me, who was serving his internship at Andrews Hospital at the Tuskegee Institute in 1932 and assisted in the experiment's clinical work, stated that neither the interns nor the subjects knew what the study involved. They lied to them people. And I'm going to show you how. It says the people who came in were not told what was being done, Dr. Williams said. We were told we wanted to test them. They were not told, as so far as I know, what they were being tested for or what they were not being treated for. As far as he could tell, the subjects thought that they were being treated for rheumatism and bad stomachs. He did recall administering to the men what he thought were drugs to combat syphilis, and yet he thought back on the matter, Dr. Williams conjectured that some may have been a placebo, meaning they weren't even giving them drugs. He was absolutely certain at one point we did not tell them that we were looking at syphilis, and I don't think they would have known what that was going forward. It says, a subject of the experience said much the same thing. Charles Pollard recalled clearly the day in 1932 when some men came by and told him that he received free physical. Now, remember, these guys were all poor, destitute. They were from Alabama, okay, and illiterate. He says they would receive a free examination if he appeared the next day at a nearby one-room school. So he says, I went over and they told me that I had bad blood, Paul recalled. And that's what they've been telling me ever since. They come around from time to time to check me over, and they say, Charlie, you got bad blood. An official of the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta stated that he understood the term bad blood was a synonym for syphilis in the black community. Paula replied, that could not be true because I never heard of such a thing. All I knew was they just kept telling me I had bad blood. They never mentioned syphilis to me, not even once. So in our broadcast a couple of weeks ago, I said, if a people would do to us what they did to us by bringing us over here and beating us and raping our children, and if you have somebody who a town has been named after and a university has been named after who gave smallpox blankets to the native Now, mind you, when we talk about the native population, Bishop de las Casas, who came over here, when Columbus came over, said there were millions upon millions of indigenous people here in this hemisphere when they came. But within a span of 10 years, they had wiped out and exterminated, killed millions. Just wiped them out. Just wiped them out. So we're talking about a country that did that to the Native Americans, and we have suffered what I'm learning, this term is called Mayafa, which is our own African Holocaust in this hemisphere. Okay, if they would do that, giving lead-infested water to our children anywhere in this country, shouldn't surprise anybody. And let me just connect the dots here. You notice that no charge, Governor, I think his name is Snyder, who's the governor of that state, no charges have been filed against him. Nothing has been done. Nothing has happened. When they would shoot our ancestors down in the street, when they would hang our women and our men from what we call giblets, you could hang about 20 black people at a time on this device. When they would do that, it would be a public exhibition. The people that killed our people, nothing happened to them. So Governor Snyder, nothing has happened to him. And we're talking about the lead in Flint, Michigan alone. Here's some of the information. It's 900 times higher than the EPA limit. This is what's going. We're talking about bad blood now. See, I'm connecting the dots. This is what's going into the bloodstream of our children in Flint, Michigan, right now. It's quiet because this is insane. This is crazy, and this is happening. And this is I just read you the definition of genocide. It's genocidal, and nothing has happened to that governor. Nothing has happened to them people that run that town. I read a couple of weeks ago how they knew this when they switched the water system over to the Flint water. They knew this.
They knew that back in 2014. And 2014. It's my understanding that even the mayor is refusing to resign.
And you know what? Nothing is going to happen to him.
Oh no!
Nothing's going to happen.
It's crazy. Listen, that's all we have time for today. If we need to if we need to say anything else about this Flint, Michigan issue, know that we will. You know, as additional information comes available, and likewise, if there's something that you don't understand so far as how to actually connect the dots from a historical perspective to what we are seeing today, hey, hit us up online, hit us up on Facebook, join the live chat on Tuesday night when we air the broadcast. We're here, we're available, and we're here to enlighten you and provide you with more information, but most of all, to encourage you to look into these issues on your own. BraveTalk Radio.
Hi, this is Toni Emehel. You know, in the book of Ephesians, the Apostle Paul exhorted Ephesian believers to see prayer as a weapon to use in fighting spiritual battles. Are you fighting any spiritual battles today? Satan wants you to feel that you're all alone and that nobody cares about you or your situation. But he could be no further away from the truth. We are here for you. Join us for prayer during a weekly prayer call each Sunday at 8:30 p.m. This prayer call has two specific objectives. Our first objective is to bind the hand of the enemy that comes to kill, steal, and destroy you. Our second objective is to pray for God's covering and His protection over you as you go about the duties of your week. So join us each week, each Sunday at 8:30 p.m. by dialing 518-530-1840. That number again is 518-530-1840. You will be asked to enter an access ID, and the access ID is 211-341-648. You are listening to Brave Talk Radio at ToniEmehel.com.